If I had a nickel for how much smack talk I've given the 240SX, I wouldn't have to sell my spare wheels for more wheels. But it's true, the car is something of an idol for some people and a joke to others. A car that redefined Nissan's position in the sports coupe car world. A car that had 16-year-olds buying them for $1,000 16 years ago. And nowadays it's meeting the same price as a C4 Corvette. Ladies and gentlemen, there was a time where you wanted to know about this car, but now it's time to take it a step further. I'm Alex Martini with 2 underscores on Instagram, and today we're talking about hype it up, baby, how to modify a Nissan 240SX. The Nissan 240SX, the official car for people who got teenagers addicted to Juul. Welcome to Martini Works. You need parts? Mod your car at martiniworks.com. Have a 240SX already built? Well, add it over to our build thread so you can help people mod their car with us, because we, quite frankly, give a shit about building things right. That's why we started this thing. So before we can talk about modifications, let's break it down with a brief history on the Nissan 240SX. The S10 Nissan Silvia can be traced all the way back to 1975, where Nissan was trying to find an opportunity to utilize its recent acquisition of Datsun while scaling its support in the racing program in Japan. The S10, though, was dog water. Like nowadays, Daddy Toyota had beaten them to the punch with the Toyota Celica, so times were already tough on the little Nissan that could. But like me in a GT7 lobby racing without a qualifying time, we never give up. We're going for the gold and we ain't gonna quit. The S110 would be designed actually to have a rotary, but Nissan grew a spine and said, no, that's probably a bad idea, and would snag a 2.2 liter Z22 inline 4. It was decent, but people still weren't actually happy with the power output for the car. Now, let's be clear. No one knew what the fuck they were doing this whole thing for. This is 1979. Americans were looking for oil, and Japanese car companies were trying to sneak underneath domestic car companies to steal market share here in the United States. So while Toyota and Honda were kicking shins and running off the playground, Nissan was being a nerd at home, still trying to figure out just how the hell they were going to make a competitive, affordable sports car that wasn't just a Nissan badged Toyota. It needed to stand out. So like Zack Snyder returning to the Batman to unfuck his own movie, Nissan would finally give the Silvia name the power plant it needed, because that's the only thing it was missing. A turbocharged 1.8 liter CA18 inline 4. A few years later, you'd get 160 horsepower out of like a V6 out of the naturally aspirated 300ZX. And a few years later, you got more people to get excited about the car because finally the 240SX would come across the pond with the 2.4 liter. Now, did that come with a turbo?
No, it did not, and don't ask again.
The Nissan 240SX, the official car for people that say you don't need power, you need seat time, because they're in denial. The 240SX came in at 2,700 pounds, a solid 55-45 weight distribution, and enough power in the S13 chassis for Americans to figure out that something could potentially be done here. Then something did get done there. The multi-link rear suspension and McPherson fronts made it a nice adaptable car to play around with. The 4-wheel disc brakes made it actually properly fun to brake. It had ABS, a limited slip differential, which that was like the automotive gods' green gift to earth, because they finally put it all together, okay? And because Americans have this weird thing where they have the ability to just go wherever they want and take whatever they want, and because the world has boats, it took approximately 14 seconds for someone to throw out the KA into the nearest junkyard and replace it with a 202 horsepower SR20 DET. Not that there's anything wrong with the KA, gels, but come on. You're telling me you don't want 200 horsepower? I get it. You want to keep it raw. It's slow. The S14 would get a different look that you either love or hate, a term that most people won't say loud enough to get criticized to determine if you said it right or wrong. Those two words were kooky and zenky, or something like that. And although production ended in 1999, the car lives on, with its rusty bones, mismatched body panels, and less clean examples than a clean sock you could find in a boy's bedroom at 16. But we're not here for that. We're here to help you modify the Nissan 240SX. And I'm sorry, I get carried away. Okay, we're happy to talk about how to modify this slippery, slidey bore where you buy these goddamn parts from Martini Works. You understand? The 240SX can be broken down into what I would call the 240SX pyramid. At the bottom are the crusties, the most common. The car resembles the crust around a piece of toast that's been just like demolished, okay? The color panels make no sense. The owner brags about hitting walls, but not like a love tap wall hit, like he just climbed a wall without the help of Matt Field. So stay away from these unless you're looking to learn how to rebuild an entire car. Then we have the Icks, a little bit above. Cars that have survived the test of time, but no one decided to change the mods since the car was initially bought and modified in 2002. The result is a color combo you think is nostalgic, but most people that don't know cars would just think that you're an avid McDonald's McDonald's enthusiast because everything is yellow and red. Next up is the clean 240. This is where the prices get high. The one that's not perfect, but the body panels are new. The frame is in one piece and it's straight. The engine is overhauled and the car looks relatively put together. Even if it drifts, the car doesn't sound like it's one insult away from falling apart. This is where we want to stay, right here. And finally, we have the minties. These are the ones everyone thinks they have. Single paint color, clean glass, good plastics, a pleasurable driving experience with brakes that work. Contrary to popular belief, these are about as rare as a B-hat back in 2008. So if you're going to modify a crusty, just don't. Just get it running, dog, please. If you've got one of the rest, the key thing to remember here is that if you're buying one already modified, you are going to have some kind of problem. Depending on which type of 240SX you bought is a direct correlation, though, to the issue. Icks always have electrical issues. Cleans always have power issues and fuel pump concerns. And minties always have an issue. Usually, it's rust under the fresh paint because they didn't prep it enough and they didn't want to look underneath the trunk. You'll never modify a clean 240SX, and that's all right. But these cars weren't meant to be as alive as long as they have been. So be sure to spend some time around the maintenance side of things first. Things like Stop Tech brake pads and rotors, along with steel braided lines, are going to feel awesome. Going for some clean Koenig hypergrams and Continental tires will make the car just feel better. Why not work VSKFs? Because I'm still convinced 90% of 240SX builds have a core issue that's wrong with their car, but they bought expensive as wheels and now the car's steering pump doesn't work. Fix your shit first. Going budget with the things you want and going above and beyond on the things that you need will make the 240 a car you grow into. Starting with BC coils versus air suspension or Koenigs versus Works. Save some cash for the SR swap that you'll need to clean up, or buy new gaskets for the windows that aren't gonna roll all the way up and that you're gonna leak when you get the car washed. Should you get a perfect goddamn example with absolutely no issues, God bless your soul. The 240SX, the official car of people who used to talk shit on MySpace. The dual cam KA list. Hot shot performance cold air intake. Get a header of some kind. An ACT stage 1 clutch will do you just fine. Timing chain guide can be removed or upgraded. Definitely recommend going through that whole thing. Now, fast road cams, or you can go learn about the 248 232 cam swap system thing. It can be a bit messy, but on a budget, it can be a good thing to do. When you start getting into the cams of the KAs, there's like a whole wealth of knowledge of people that just spent way too much time figuring out what cams work best with the KA. And I'm not gonna sit here and tell you which ones you should go with, but there is a plethora of knowledge in the good old forum. Obviously, an aftermarket ECU or a piggyback if you're on a budget for wheels, tires, and suspension, all from Martini Works. Preference would be BC Racing, Continental tires for daily, or you can get some Nexen SU1s or Heelys for drifting, okay? Wheels, I'd go with 17-inch Koenigs or 18s if you want a ball. If you want a sports style wheel, the RPF 1s or the NTO3s from Enki are gonna look really good. That's my personal favorite, but obviously people think it's a little bit played out. If you want more JDM style, Gramlite 57DRs or Work Kawamis are solid choices, and you can say that you have JDM wheels. Now, if you want to eventually modify your KA, here's what you need. The 240SX, the official car for people who drink more bubbler than water. Get gauge happy, because if you're prepping to do anything with the engine, things like wideband, oil pressure, boost gauge, all of that stuff, especially if you're going into forced induction, you're gonna wanna get an aftermarket oil pan with like the return well bung welded. You're gonna wanna go and upgrade your fuel pump, and you're gonna wanna make sure all the gaskets are good. If you go to turbo the KA, then you're gonna go into an aftermarket radiator from like Koyo or Mishimoto. The turbo kit, this is where it gets messy. You can go as cheap as ISR, and you can go all the way up to some old stuff from even HKS or Greddy. But we're leaving this space open because it's up to you.
Actually, no. What you should do is this and this. No, what you got wrong. You should do 252 to 248.
Listen, guys and gals, the 240SX is the equivalent of an 18-year-old voter in a room filled with angry Democrats and Republicans. You can scream 9 million points to the kid, but at the end of the day, making a choice between like 3 or 4 things is way easier to understand. There's 9 million different options you can do with your 240SX. So you can drop your mod list on the build threads and share a link below if you've got a 240SX that someone could learn from. Otherwise, keep your mouth shut! Unless I'm wrong. If you're going above 10 to 12 pounds of boost, you're gonna want new pistons and rods, and I'd also recommend a refresh on any more gaskets, pans, and plugs, because you probably forgot one when you turbocharged it the first time. The tune zone on KAs is tricky, because they're kind of boring stock. They get a little better with power mods on a tune, but they're still slow, so they can get unreliable with forced induction if you try making a ton of power. The sweet spot for nearly everyone has been 300 horsepower with a turbo dual cam KA that can get you to the drift day and back home. The SR swaps are undoubtedly popular, but they're not any more reliable. They're just more powerful. Anybody tells you that an SR is more reliable, I don't agree. And just because you can, doesn't mean you should. The Nissan 240SX is a misunderstood platform. It's been chopped, cut, slivered, dismembered, transformed, and twisted into so many things. LS swaps, RB swaps, SR swaps, EV swaps even. It can do anything and everything because Nissan made it the perfect starting foundation platform. But it was an affordable Nissan. It ain't bulletproof to your dumbass ideas. So how do you modify a Nissan 240SX with a KA? Easy, baby. You spend an appropriate amount of money, which should not exceed $7,500 on a clean 240SX, and you immediately jump into diagnosing the health of the engine. Do a compression check. Check the tensioners and oil. Make sure that all is well with your 30-something-year-old baby 4-cylinder. And after that, take a big breath of air and go searching for rust because it's there. But it's better to find out before it's too late and start budgeting for the repair when you send it off during wintertime if you have that where you're from. Then go into suspension bits, replace the polyurethane bushings, check the tie rods, replace the brakes and pads, get some aftermarket wheels and tires, and then invest in a decent coilover kit. If you think the car feels shitty now, it will feel like more shit when you put shitty coilovers in it, okay? Drive it and realize that the car will need more power. So do the mod list above with quality parts, and you'll experience a build that won't just live its entire life on jack stands, because that's the worst kind of car enthusiast you can be, is one without a car to drive. But most importantly, if you're looking for parts for your 240SX, mod your car at Martini Works. And if you already have one built, add it to our build threads at martiniworks.com so you can help people build their dream 240SX. I'm Alex Martini. Let me know if you enjoyed this video, and we'll see you on the next one. Adios.